Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Grenada Co-operative Bank's live webinar. I am Brenda Batiste. The format for this evening's webinar is a panel discussion. The presenters are two of the bank's top executives, and we will welcome viewer interaction by way of live phone calls and WhatsApp messaging of your questions for the panel. A warm welcome to everyone tuned in on the live streaming platforms of Grenada Co-operative Bank's Facebook and YouTube platforms. In 2020, the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank and the ECCU Bankers Association reached agreement on a loan repayment moratorium. This was done to provide relief to customers adversely affected by COVID-19. The program facilitated a loan repayment moratorium or deferral of an initial period up to 6 months. The moratorium was then extended for a 12-month period from October 2020. This decision for the extension was in the sole discretion of the banks and was based on an assessment of the financial condition of the customers. A waiver of late fees and charges were also applicable to eligible customers during that period. That period of the ECCB-supported loan deferral program is coming to an end. And just as the Grenada Co-operative Bank took the lead after the moratorium announcements in 2020, the bank is again stepping out front with customers at the heart of its operations to ensure that they are making the best choice when loan deferral payment is no more. Here, we'd like to introduce our special panelists. Mr. Larry Lawrence has a banking career of over 25 years. He will become the new Managing Director of the Grenada Co-operative Bank when the current Managing Director, Mr. Richard Duncan, retires on December 5th of this year. Mr. Lawrence is now Managing Director Designate. Mr. Dion Moses, banking career spans over 30 years, during which Mr. Moses has and continues to contribute to the growth and enhancement of the banking sector in Grenada. Mr. Moses is the Chief Experience Manager of Grenada Co-operative Bank. We'd like to welcome our special presenters, Mr. Larry Lawrence and Mr. Dion Moses.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brenda.
Gentlemen, why is it important to the Grenada Co-operative Bank to take the lead on financial choices for its customers in this period? Mr. Lawrence, we'll begin with you.
Yes, thank you for the question, Brenda. In 2020, at the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, we at the Grenada Co-operative Bank hosted a program titled, "Is a Loan Payment Postponement Right for Me?" So it is against that backdrop that we felt we must engage you, the customers, with the team making the best choice when the loan payment postponement is no more. We want customers to know that we are still here and that we very much want to help. The end of the loan payment postponement program does not mean that the bank will no longer be supportive of customers in their individual and their specific needs. We want to hear from you, our customers. We want to be able to treat with your individual circumstances. We want to help you to make the best choice. So what is the best choice? The best choice may be a continuation of the existing arrangement that the customer now enjoys. The best choice may be providing some working capital support to a business so that the business can continue to make payroll, the business can continue to keep the lights on. So the best choice will be made when the bank and each customer find the best fit for that customer through engagement about their individual circumstances. So this is why we're doing it.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Lawrence. Mr. Moses?
At Co-op Bank, we are very sensitive to the needs of our customers. We believe that of all the banks in Grenada, we are the closest to the Grenadian people. We always take feedback from them, and so we are always guided by what is happening with them. We clearly understood that people were in distress. Several persons were laid off from their jobs, particularly in the tourism sector, and several businesses were forced to close their doors. So we know that incomes were affected, households were affected, and so we thought it necessary to step in early to alleviate the problems that our customers were facing. We've stepped in early. Now that the program with the ECCB is coming to an end, we want to step in early also to remind customers that we are still here for them in the event that they still need our help. This is the reason why we do what we do.
Great. Can you share what is the number and value of loans under deferral in Grenada as of June 30th, 2021?
Right now, we have, and maybe I should give some context.
Right.
When we started the program, we assisted 1,058 individuals. So that means households. And about 142 businesses. That figure obviously changed because some people were able to find work, some people were able to find employment, and so that figure has dwindled down now to 262 individuals and 138 businesses are still under moratorium.
Okay. And how would you say from just monitoring, how have your customers, how have they progressed? You just mentioned numbers there, but how have they progressed with the moratorium program? You had to give us an assessment for how customers and or businesses, how they fared.
Right. So some customers opted for a full moratorium on principal and on interest. Some took moratoriums on principal only and some on interest only. Immediately upon finding a new source of income or restoration of income, some people, because in discussion with us, we clearly stated, as soon as you find cash flows again, it is in your best interest to start back paying your loans. So some people started back paying their loans, and as you see, the figure has moved for individuals from 158 down to 262. So that means that several persons were able to find some source of income. We know for a fact that many persons who were employed in the tourism industry were able to start their own small businesses, most of them in the food sector. And so as soon as they were able to get some new income, they started to repay their loans. It's a different story with businesses. Businesses continued to suffer, particularly in the SGU sector, and that's why the figures are still so high. And we know that the investments in that sector were large investments. So several businesses are still struggling. While some may have reopened, the level of business that they are conducting is nowhere close to what they were doing before. So you may find a hotel may be open, but instead of occupancy being 70 and 80%, you're talking about 15, 20% at best. So they are able to pay one or two bills, but certainly that kind of cash flow is not sufficient to have them reinvest in the business, have them service their debt. And so we see quite a number of businesses are still not yet out of the woods. We hope that there's light at the tunnel with some new things that are happening in the economy. So we are very hopeful that we can see more businesses coming out of the moratorium.
Right. Mr. Lawrence, when someone hears ECCB supported loan deferral program, explain what it means and the implications for that program for the bank and its customers.
Right. So the ECCB understood what was happening to customers, the implications for customers in the community, and they therefore gave the banking community very broad flexibility to facilitate loan payment deferral, and typically within as banks are regulated entities, there are rules, that the banks must follow with respect to each loan. So the ECCB gave the banks the flexibility so that the normal rules did not apply, right? So of course, one would appreciate and understand that after 18 months, since the onset of the program, and as at the end of September, there is need to review the situation. Certainly in the context of Grenada, we've seen the phased reopening of the SGU. We've seen certainly some buoyancy in the construction sector. Certainly 18 months ago, March, April, there was a total lockdown, of the airports and so on. So essentially, if you consider the economy, being a distribution of goods and services and consumption, that was grinded to a halt, or it slowed down, But since we've seen some measured reopening of the economic activity, there is a need now for the ECCB to sort of bring the program to an end upon review, right? And therefore, what does that mean for customers? It just simply means for customers that the banks continue to review. The banks now have to engage customers who previously enjoyed whatever moratorium arrangements. Those customers will be contacted. Those customers are strongly encouraged to come to the bank so that we can treat with their individual circumstance. So hence the reason why, again, we ask and we beseech customers to come. We are very much aware that certainly for each customer, it could be extremely stressful. But that's why the bank is here to help. The bank as a big economic entity, the customer as an individual, we are certainly here to treat with them, to help them, and we certainly encourage them to want to come to us. We also consider that we want customers to continue to have confidence, confidence in that, you need to have the very firm belief, that you believe in something, the certainty and the trustworthiness of something, right? So customers need to have the confidence, that all is not lost. Mr. Moses would have indicated, for example, the program at the commencement being 1,058 odd customers at its peak, retail, right? So that would have been approximately $60 million thereabout, right? But now, moving from 1,058, reduction of close to 76 or so odd percent in terms of number of customers, right? But in terms of value, we've moved from 60 million down to 18 million on the retail side, right? So certainly that we've seen customers as their Mr. Moses would have mentioned that persons became very business-oriented, entrepreneurial, right? And therefore, whatever monies that would have come to them, they would have looked to come to adjust and make good on their responsibility for the loans and so that they have. So that's very encouraging. On the business side, it's a little bit more stressed because one will appreciate, again, as Mr. Moses mentioned, that they're chunky investments, they're not small, right? So, of course, we've seen the phased reopening of the SGU. We expect full reopening sometime in January. So those particular customers, certainly the sentiments that they've expressed as they've contacted us is that they are looking to make good, or certainly make better on their arrangements in January when the SGU opens in full.
Right. Now that we're on that path, because you kind of preempted my next question to you,
Yes.
Both of you, is what does the bank want its impacted and affected customers to know?
That again, Mr. Moses would have prefaced it by talking about we are certainly here as a bank owned by Grenadians, for Grenadians. We have certainly a large share of the market, and therefore we have a conscience. We are here to help. Customers are not alone. So we want those customers to know that we are going to assist, but we are asking the customers again to certainly come to us, share with us so that we can help.
I would put it this way. We want customers to have hope.
Yeah.
We don't want them to despair and to think that all is lost. We want them to think that there is some light at the end of the tunnel. We are starting to see movements in the south. For example, Larry just mentioned the reopening of the SGU. And we know that we are still plagued with problems. We don't deny that. But we want people to start thinking outside of the box. We saw that about 800 individuals were able to find some kind of meaningful work or employment. We saw people getting to be entrepreneurial, as he said. So we are saying, think outside the box. You don't have to tell yourself that you are destined to be a salaried person all your life. You could be a business owner too. You can think a different industry to the one that you were in before, for example. And we want people to know that if all of those things fail, we are still here for you. Come in, talk to us, let us know what is happening with you so that we can chart the way forward.
Right. There might be some borrowers now looking here in moratorium coming to an end, and the bank is opening its arms and saying, come talk to us. So those who are still having financial challenges at the end of the determined period, how are the extensions of the deferment? How is that going to be justified? What would you want those customers to know? Is it going to be case by case? Is,
Right.
Customers, business?
Especially when we talk business, it has to be a case by case. Each business is unique. And we have a slate of businesses, but most of them are spread out over a number of different industries. And different industries are plagued by some very specific problems. So we can only treat with customers when we know the specifics of their own business. And even though that moratorium by the ECCB is going to be closing up soon, it does not say that the bank cannot still do its own moratorium program. There would be consequences for the banks going forward when they do their own program, in the way they treat with the loans, in the way they have to report into the ECCB, in the way they could take interest and so into profits, things like that. But Co-op Bank is saying that we will be willing to work with you. We are willing to look outside of the box for solutions that are non-traditional in banking business in Grenada to help people move forward. We can only do that if you come in and you chat with us.
In terms of helping people to understand a bit, so for instance, this is a question that I have, and I think people may want to know as well. So what if I accept a service offer from you in terms of the deferral? Do I pay the skip payments of the loan rather than paying the overdue amounts in a lump sum? What would you advise? What's the best scenario for something like that?
All right, so there is no one paintbrush for every job.
Right.
It all depends on the cash flow. Cash flow to a business is like the blood in your veins, in your body. Cash flows determine everything. If you come and you chat with us, what we would look at is what is your forecast for cash flows in the near future. So where do you see the business going 3 months from now, 9 months from now, 1 year from now? How do we see the cash flows? We are going to test your cash flows to see how reasonable they are, how achievable they are, and if we believe that your forecast is in fact fairly reflective of the risk and everything else that we've seen, then we can start planning a repayment program for you around your cash flow. So if the cash flows could only afford you a monthly payment, then a monthly payment will be the best for you. If it cannot afford the full monthly payment, maybe interest only, maybe principal only, it all depends. So talk about lump sum payments in a time like this, that might be wishful thinking.
Right.
You have to be getting a windfall from someplace. You have to be winning a lottery or something to be thinking, lump sums. But it's not altogether impossible because some people can, in fact, shed some of the assets they have to pay down on the debt. So it's not altogether impossible. That's why we say it has to be on an individual basis.
Right.
The solutions must fit the business itself.
Right. And of course, the terms and the conditions that you work out is based on the discussions and the solutions of the bank and the customer come up with together.
Yes.
Right.
And certainly to add further context to what Mr. Moses just shared, a lot of customers feel sometimes pressured to come to the bank with very optimistic forecast, right? So what the banking officer has to do is, of course, know your customer. We've developed each customer, as Mr. Moses mentioned, is, individual. They have their own DNA, that's very specific to them. So if you know your customer, and we are obligated to know our customer's individual circumstance. A customer, for example, may, of course, see their circumstance. The bank would see that customer and many other customers like that customer. So you are able to sort of determine and help that customer to know that, listen, this may not be particularly realistic. And until the customer maybe is able to speak to you in particular about what would have informed their optimism, it is always best to say, okay, no, whilst this may work because maybe you think that's what the bank wants to hear, but you find invariably that you would have to ask the customer to certainly, let's look at the worst case scenario, let's treat with the worst case scenario, so that the customer is not put off, if that optimistic situation is not realized looking forward.
If the customer think that they won't be in a better position, right, at the end, and as the customer now, right, if they think they won't be in a better position to pay at the end of the deferral, so let's say if they end up getting a payment deferral, how will that affect their credit?
In the circumstances that we are in now, it will not affect their credit.
Okay.
No, because of course, Mr. Moses certainly 1 year ago, in mentioning, in delivering the program, we spoke a lot to a moratorium is an agreement between the bank and the customer. So the customer has engaged in an agreement with the bank, and its best efforts based on that agreement to hold to that agreement.
Right.
So any customer, of course, having held to that agreement, then the bank is not going to use that against the customer in the future, because you fell on some hard times. So no, actually what we have seen, and the bank, of course, will have had the economic downturns from 2008 between 2012 to 2015. Many customers who would have certainly fallen afoul of their arrangements.
Right.
And those customers now, we always say in the bank that the cream always flows to the top, right? So those customers are now continue to be borrowing customers. They've restored, so and so through their economic prowess, through taking advantage of opportunities that exist in their space, doing well. Those customers are good borrowing customers up to this time. So again, just based on our history, our past, knowing that customers would have fallen short through no fault of their own. So it cannot and will not be held against them in terms of their credit going forward.
That'll be good news for customers
Yes,
listening.
exactly.
That's really good news.
So certainly at the end of the deferrals, we are hoping
Right.
that for most customers it's going to be a good story.
Yeah.
Good.
It is going to be I fell on some hard times and somebody was there for me. I was able to rebound and now I'm back on my feet again. And that will be a happy ending. We ride off into the sunset and so on. Unfortunately, it may not be the same for everyone. And already we have seen some businesses that have failed. And we don't want that for any of our customers, but we are thinking that we should be able to work out scenarios for most of our customers.
Right.
But for the ones, we can't be naive, the ones who are heavily leveraged, the ones who have no more equity that they could put in, the ones who will still be affected maybe a year from now, because we don't know.
Right.
Now that we have COVID cases rising again, we just don't know. And some may not be able to continue. For those persons, the trick is always in understanding at the earliest possible juncture exactly where I'm going with this business, what I need to do. And taboo for everyone is pulling the plug. Nobody likes to pull the plug on a business that they saw as their baby, their dream. But if it comes to that, we still will want to work with customers for the best possible workout scenario. But we are hopeful, and our thinking is that most persons will be able to ride through this storm. It is another crisis, but in crises, some rise to the occasion. And believe it or not, in crises, there are startups. Yes. And while some are suffering, there are opportunities for people to do well. So you would notice that some people do well and some people are just still struggling. We are hoping that there'll be a good outcome for all our customers.
Let's pick up on good outcome and doing well. As you monitor and assess the performance of your customers on deferral, when they start doing better, right? What's the conversation like? What are you saying to them once you notice, hey, they're doing better? What's the conversation like?
Okay. When we did the first program, we said to customers, it all has to do with your ability to pay, your cash flows. Again, what you're asking has to do again with the cash flows. So I was shut for a long time. I am now starting to see some business again. For most people, it don't mean that they could immediately start paying the loan.
Okay.
When you didn't have income for such a long time, there are things you now have to catch up on.
Yeah.
There are things you have to do. How do I do these things? If I use, let's take a hotel for example. The plant is just sitting there. It's deteriorating. Some people will try to have your maintenance crew and so in there to keep it going, but there's just so much you could do with no cash flows. You start getting some cash flows in, and immediately you're thinking, how can I improve on the cash flows? How can I make sure the cash flows are sustainable? How would it be sustainable? I have to keep the plant looking sprightly. I have to recover the seats on the chairs and so on. I have to do things to improve on the same cash flow. Would I then take all the money and just pay up my loan, or do I balance it by paying a little to the loan, paying up a little arrears I have, maybe Nawasa, whoever, and using some to make the business sustainable? So again, it has to be a workout plan. Yes. It is not a one-fit-all answer. It has to be, again, the circumstances surrounding the business, present in the business, and in collaboration with the bank. We will determine that this is the cash flows I have, but these are the things I need to do.
Right.
You work that out with the bank. We agree, okay, we will only take this little portion here and you do this so we could put the business on a sustainable
Right.
footing. We all then will be happy at the end.
Yeah. It's calling for a real open and honest conversation with
Yes.
the bank. So as Mr. Lawrence said earlier, you don't come in with feigned optimism or
Exactly.
fantasy.
Yes.
And so you
Exactly.
can actually work out and help the customer. Is that correct?
Exactly.
Yes.
That is correct.
Yes, and to add further to what Mr. Moses has said, and in further to answer your question, it's long established in the bank that when you have a loan that's long term, you pay that loan with future profits. So you have some current profits in hand. Those profits should not be used to pay down the loan in lump sum, because that will then frustrate other opportunities. You know, all businesses have their financing requirements, which is your loan repayments, and then you have your investing requirements, which is your, as Mr. Moses put it, you need to refit the chairs, you need to spruce up the plant, you know, so to speak. So you have to have a proper disciplined and measured approach, you know, and the bank will be wrong-footed to expect customers to use up all of their surplus cash, you know, into paying the loan aggressively. No, that will not be recommended.
As the bank monitor the performance of customers and during this period, customers and their unique sets of circumstances, because based on everything you gentlemen have said, sounds like every situation, business or personal, is rather unique. So as you monitor that, of course, that is hinged to the economic situation of the country, as directly, hinged to what is happening in the economy. So the economic, the situations of the unemployment, that must have been a big thing. You saw the low tourist arrivals, you alluded to it earlier, and now with SGU reopening and the uptake in construction, how has the downturns, the unemployment, the low tourists, and now the uptake of the SGU and the construction, how is the bank, what was your forecast, if you will, and looking at how, loans are performing and so on, what would you say to your customers at this time?
Yeah, so very good question. What you're referring to, I guess, is sort of macroeconomics, right? So again, just let me give you some context. In 2020, at the onset of the pandemic, there was a lot of uncertainty. Persons could not, it was said that a forecast was not worth the paper it was written on, because there was just so much of the unknown, right? But fast forward a year and a half, later, COVID has become certainly more normalized, right? We understand much more of the implications of COVID. So therefore, there is the opportunity for us to plan better, forecast better, right? Again, some context. In March 2021, Grenada, the total loans on moratorium was about $433 million. That's in Grenada, across the commercial banking sector, right? In terms of total, that was about 24%, of the total, loans and advances within Grenada. I think it totaled about 1.8 billion. So that's in March 2021. But with the opening of the SGU, the phased opening, the opening of the airport, the buoyancy in the construction sector, what we have seen across the banking community, has been a healthy, stable demand for consumer durables. People still buying a lot of vehicles, brand new vehicles. Persons are buying land. There's commercial activity in construction and so on. So certainly for us in the banking community and core bank in particular, we are heartened by that. It means that persons have not given up. As Mr. Moses talked about, there is that sense of hope, that sense of optimism. So clearly we've not given up. The banking community, there continues to be very strong liquidity, because it means that, customers continue to have confidence, we as a banking institution, certainly being here tonight, Mr. Moses and I, on behalf of Core Bank, we are acting in a responsible manner, because you need to be sensible and you need to be trustworthy, right? So certainly in terms of what we've seen, in terms of all the indicators, is for us to be optimistic. And of course, looking forward to January next year with, SGU coming to full strength, God's willing, considering that, again, we have much more information about COVID. We've kind of learned how to be able to live as much as is normal as possible with it. So again, there's more prediction, more predictability. And therefore, with that, less uncertainty, more predictability, then therefore we can be heartened by that.
Thank you so much, Mr. Lawrence. Viewers, you're looking at a webinar hosted by Grenada Co-operative Bank Limited, and it is making the best choice when the loan payment deferral is no more. We are speaking with the manager designate of Grenada Co-operative Bank, Mr. Larry Lawrence, and Mr. Dion Moses, the customer experience manager. We take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Co-op Bank introduces e-payments, our new e-banking feature that allows you to send money to friends or family. E-payments, the swift, simple, and secure way of transferring money.
Welcome home.
Co-op Bank introduces e-payments, our new e-banking feature that allows you to save time by paying your bills online. E-payments, the swift, simple, and secure way of transferring money.
Welcome home.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Of course, we're here with Grenada Co-operative Bank putting on the webinar, making the best choice, the right choice, that is, when the loan deferral payment is no more. Viewers, just so you are aware, you can call 444-2667 and WhatsApp 410-2273 with your questions for the presenters. Telephone number 444-2667 and WhatsApp your questions to 410-2273 for the panel. A panelist is the managing director designate of the Grenada Co-operative Bank, Mr. Larry Lawrence, and Mr. Dion Moses, the experience manager. Before we took the break, Mr. Lawrence, you were really honing in on just how the situation in Grenada and how the bank is opening its arms for its customers. And Mr. Moses, you wanted to say something before I took the break.
On the same matter?
Yes.
I think Larry covered it completely. We are optimistic that there is going to be a turnaround. With the opening up of the SGU, SGU represents just over 20% of GDP. It's not just a matter of the students coming back and spending money in Grenada. It's housekeepers being hired. It's a set of peripheral things that happen around the SGU that is really important for the economy, for individuals, for families, so that they can regain employment. And the thing that has been critical for the last 18 months, Larry mentioned it, is construction. People continue to build.
Yeah.
That says people are hopeful. People are still falling in love, getting married, wanting to build a house. So it says people are hopeful that things are going to turn around, and we continue to occupy this land of ours called Grenada.
Yeah. What are some of the best scenarios, some of the best outcomes, like best scenarios you can share with your customers about what has happened in the last year or so in terms of, the challenges they've had and the deferrals that you've offered and how you've worked with them? What are some of your best scenarios? I'm sure they'll inspire somebody, some customer looking on.
We've had some very good stories. To me, I feel good when I see young persons leave employment and start their own business. And I have seen some persons start businesses and now they are doing very, very well. And one person, said, I can't figure out why I stayed so long. Why I stayed so long. But sometimes circumstances have to push us. And the mother of invention is necessity. So sometimes when there is nothing, you look at the kids and you don't know what you're going to do next, how you're going to feed them next. Well, maybe I should get up and do something. Maybe I should make some sandwiches and go sell. Something as simple as that. And a number of people have become entrepreneurs overnight and with no regrets because they are doing well. We like to see when we see these good stories, we feel good. And don't forget that when customers do well, the bank does well.
Right.
So it's in our interest to make sure that people do well. We have a vested interest in Grenada. This is our land. We are Grenada's bank. So we have a developmental role to play in Grenada. And so when there is a problem, we really want to be the first to step forward and see how we could fix this. And that is what we see as our role in this crisis. How can we help fix this?
Right. Has your customer base grown during this period in the last year?
Yes, but mostly on the deposit side. And you may ask why, but that's a natural phenomenon. When there is a crisis, people tend to save more. It is natural, I say, because if I don't know where the next dollar is coming from, then I want to be very, very careful how I spend the last dollar that I have. And if I can postpone spending it at all, then that is what I will do. And that is what results in savings. So really and truly, when there is a crisis, people save more. So we have been seeing more deposit customers coming into the bank. We've also seen a growth on the credit side of about 7% last year. So despite the crisis, the bank has been growing.
Okay. There's a question here on WhatsApp. The person is asking, as a small business owner, how will the bank assist if I do not have financial information to bring for them?
That is a problem that has plagued small businesses for eons, as long as there's been a small business. I have no financials. The business is not big enough to hire an accountant. But I am in business. I am selling, I am producing whatever it is. And if I am to grow, I need some help. We used to have in Grenada incubators where people could go to get that kind of help. I don't know that that help is available anymore. But this is where we step in because we know our customers. If I am running a business, notwithstanding the fact that I have no financials, I can be encouraged to deposit my money in the bank at least. So the bank has a record of what I do. My advice to small business owners is always pass every cent that you make through the bank. If you do that, then there is a starting place. that the bank can work from. We can always go to the account and verify that yes, your turnover for the year has been X. Once we have that turnover, we can point you to how a very simple income and expenditure statement can be done, and with that verification of the income on your account, then we can build a scenario of what you can afford to pay the bank with a loan. And so we have been able to help small businesses like that over the many, many years. And the bank does have a plan that should come to fruition in the in the very near future, where we will be able to help small businesses to get financing from the banks and to be able to grow. I don't know about many businesses that started off as big businesses.
Right.
Most big businesses started off very, very small. Some businesses started off in somebody's kitchen. Even some of the mega corporations we see in the world now either started in a kitchen or a garage or something like that. They didn't start with big financials and stuff like that. So you have to have an institution that is sensitive to that need, an institution that understands the needs of this particular sector, and we believe we understand it well, and we can help anyone who is a small business and grow.
All right. Viewers, again, the numbers to pose your questions, 444-2667 if you're calling in on air, 444-2667, and you can send us your questions via WhatsApp to the number 410-2273. Someone is asking, how do I get rid of a deferred principal balance?
How do you get rid of the balance? Well, you pay down. That's the short.
A deferred, how do I get rid of a deferred principal balance?
But important question, because that is what everyone who had the moratorium will ask. Because for most people, it would mean now an accumulation of interest along with the principal balance. So how do I get rid of that? So once again, when you get your new cash flow, and we understand what that cash flow is, you come into the bank, and there are different scenarios we may be able to work out. For some people, it may now mean that we have to stretch the loan for a much longer period, so a much longer term. So maybe I was working for $4,000 before. I now have a job paying me only $2,000. So I'm no longer getting all that I used to. I'm only earning 50% of that. Well, your loan may have been for 5 years. I could now push that back so that your monthly installment would now match the $2,000 that you're earning. And we would want to ensure that your monthly installment is now no more than 40% of that $2,000. So no more than $800. And then we could work the term backwards to accommodate you. So there are different scenarios we may be able to work for people. If you recall, I mentioned about thinking outside of the box. If you look at some of the developed countries, you could go get a mortgage for 50 years, 40 years. That's unheard of in Grenada. I think the time will come when we will have to think of that kind of scenario to help people.
Right.
If I had no work for 5 years and I had this long moratorium and now the loan is insurmountable, it doesn't mean that I still can't pay it back. It doesn't mean that I have to lose it from my family.
Right.
It means that we have to take a much longer time to pay it back. I may not be able to pay it back, but it still may not leave the family because my child could come and pay it off. And I think that's how bankers think in these big countries where the property prices have gone way out of control. So a small apartment may be $3 million. How do I own it? Well, I could own it. I wouldn't be able to pay for it in my lifetime, but successive generations could continue paying and it stays in the family. So I'm just saying we too have to think outside of the box and work out scenarios that will be able to help our customers.
Right. Sounds like if there'll be some innovations in banking as well.
I
The
believe
situation
so.
demands it, right?
I believe so. Yes, 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 definitely.
Another question on WhatsApp. The person is asking, what about someone who has fallen sick and cannot go back to work? How can you help them? And more importantly, will you help them?
Right. So if somebody falls sick, there would be, again, different some circumstances surrounding the illness. And the first question that comes to my mind would be, did that person have some kind of insurance? Would they have been laid off based on medical grounds? So now they will get NIS. Once there is some kind of cash flow from NIS or from wherever it is, then we'll be able to work with that person. The ideal situation would be where they had medical insurance that can step in and help them, that kind of scenario. But different things, of course, would apply to different employers. And so, depending on the situation with the cash flow, we will be able to help that person. In the event that there is absolutely no income, there's no probability of going back to work, the bank may then have to think of relying on the security for the loan if there was any. But that is always the last resort.
The last resort. Here's another question. Is the deferred principal amount added on to the loan?
Yes. Yes, typically it is added onto the loan. But again, it will depend on the customer having the conversation with the bank as to what they prefer. Mr. Moses talked about their cash flow, the strength of their cash flow, and it may be for that particular customer that we may be able to extend a separate loan so that they can treat with that specific loan for repayment on clearly defined terms based on their particular cash flow. So what does that mean? So the total of the amount that has been deferred might come up to $10,000, $12,000. The question was, do you add that amount to the existing loan? Yes, typically that's what the bank will do. The customer, however, might prefer or may want to consider that as a separate loan, whatever the amount of the deferred is, and you place it at zero interest. You know, that sometimes tend to be a motivator for customers. The intention is not for the bank to profit on the deferred amount. If the customer wants a zero interest loan just to facilitate repayment of that amount, that certainly can be accommodated, you know, as permitted by the customer's cash flow. So again, it's just again being innovative, you know, listening, you know, so that if those customers come out of this stronger, first we have more loyal customers, because it certainly means that, you know what they say about loyalty, it must be returned, right? So that customer is going to be a customer for life. You know, that customer is going to have their children come to the bank. They're going to refer, you know, and that's certainly what we want to foster. You know, we want customers to trust us. And what is trust? It is a firm belief in the reliability and the ability or strength of something or someone. Have a firm belief in that. You know, and often these things come with stories. You know, a customer knows how they felt helpless, you know, how the bank facilitated them. So you see, with that strong emotive feeling, you pass that on to generations, and we get a customer and customers for life.
Wonderful. WhatsApp is very busy. Keep them coming. So then what happens in a scenario where the client never regains employment? What will be the bank's course of action?
The client never regains employment.
Yes, what happens in that scenario?
Okay, so we could have some different interpretations of not regaining employment, meaning that the client may be salaried and therefore the client is now employed, they are now entrepreneur, right? So I would want to believe certainly that, the intention is for us to provide, the intention is for us to act responsibly, right? And responsibly, of course, comes back to acting in a sensible and trustworthy manner. So the client would have an obligation, which is a loan, and the client would be best efforts seeking employment, pursuing employment, and the client will be communicating with the bank in terms of their efforts to seek an employment. And of course, we expect that persons are survivors. Persons certainly would want to pay their facility. Persons need to provide, for their families. So certainly the employment may be in the form of they now becoming an entrepreneur. And at that point in time, it's a reassessment of the loan terms based on their cash flow from that entrepreneurship that they entered into, so that we can then make proper arrangements for the repayment of the loan.
Right. What happens in the restructuring of the loan, especially the treatment of the accumulated interest?
I think that's what Larry just responded one question before. It can be added on to the loan, it can be a standalone, it can be interest-free. So there are 3 or 4 different ways that that can be treated, but the interest must be paid. We made that quite clear. But the loan is going to be structured in a way so as not to burden the customer.
Right. Okay. So remember, you can send your WhatsApp questions to 410-2273, and we thank those of you who have forwarded questions. Please continue to do so. And you can call us as well via telephone. It's 444-2667. We take a quick break. We'll be right back.
We set out to build something, not for us, but for you. In 1932, we set out on a mission to establish an institution that catered to the financial needs of every Grenadian. We envisioned a space where our people felt secure and welcome to do business with familiar faces. This was more than a commercial enterprise. Because we considered you to be family, we saw ourselves as building more than just a bank. We likened this establishment to a house. Since we opened our doors in 1933, you've remained with us ever since, growing with us and saving with us, but most importantly, trusting us to safeguard your interests. Through unrest and turmoil, you put your faith in us to be the shelter against adversity. Your trust is the foundation upon which we continue to build to provide stability and support for your dreams and aspirations. Your trust helped our family to grow, and as we grew, your needs grew in tandem. So we developed, expanding our accommodations to make you comfortable, transforming our humble abode to a modern center of business and commerce, while preserving our warm, friendly, family atmosphere. As we furnished our house with efficient services, you decorated our offices, walkways, and counters with smiles, love, and satisfaction, giving us the impetus to improve and do more. It took vision to build this establishment, and our vision has always revolved around the well-being of our people. It is vision that continues to guide our development, a vision of growth, a vision of expansion, a vision of the future. A vision that recognizes that the world is a global village and that technology has become an integral part of our lives. A vision that embraces the efficiencies of technology and its importance in diversifying our corporate and retail portfolios. A vision that represents your vision, your interests, and your needs. You see, we built a house, but it didn't take us long to realize that people, our people, make it home. Welcome home.
Welcome back to Grenada Cooperative Bank webinar. And this evening, we're really happy to engage the customers of the bank and, of course, you, the general public. We go back to WhatsApp where there's a question waiting for us. A question: what happens if someone has lost their job and has a lower cash flow than previously and cannot consistently repay the initially agreed upon amount?
Yes. So I'll take that one. If a customer would have entered previously into an arrangement, let's use an example. A customer in 2019, January, would have taken a loan of $50,000. The repayment is over 10 years, that's say $500 a month. So that is the arrangement to pay, $500 a month over 10 years. And due to the effects of the pandemic, the customer would have been laid off. They would have sought new employment. The employment before would have made them comfortable about paying the $500, but this new employment has caused their take-home pay to be lessened, and they can now afford to only pay, say, $375 a month, down from $500. So we, as the bank, need to take whatever is the remaining balance of that loan, and we may need to extend the term out from 10 years. Maybe it will need to move from between 2019 to now, it would have been 2 years. So the 8 years, because remember it was 10-year term, 2 years have gone, so it's an 8-year term remaining. That particular customer now needs to, we need to maybe make the term by another 2 years, extended by another 2 years, back to 10 maybe, so that it can comfortably fall within the 375 repayment amount that the customer is now comfortable to pay. And those are the kind of discussions that we continue to have every day with customers, right? So certainly as soon as one can ask the question, we can immediately respond to it, because those are scenarios that our customers are faced with, live scenarios that we have to treat with.
Okay, great. What did at this juncture? What is what is the main thing you want your customers to know, what the bank really want their clients to know in this period? Because everyone's probably perplexed as we see what's happening again with COVID, and
Yes.
Well, what would you really want your customers to know?
Yes, I mean, again, at a very, very high level, that the bank is here. Now, the bank collectively is thousands of customers, and you have only a small portion of customers who are impacted and affected. So each customer must know that I'm not alone. Right? So this is not just me.
Right.
There are others like me. Whilst the circumstances may be different, but it only reflects again our differences, But whilst we are different, but then there are many, many similarities. So you as a customer, you're not alone. The bank will help. The bank is here to help. Again, we reiterate that we want you to come to us. We want you to contact us. Do not be shy. We want you to engage us, call the bank. We are in waiting to be able to assist you. Mr. Moses spoke about, we want you to have hope that if you are successful, we are successful. If you are having challenges, then we would have challenges. So we want to help you to overcome those challenges. And hence the reason why we here, we in front, we are the ones engaging you via this forum, because we want to talk, we want to have a conversation. It has to be conversational. The bank is not, the say all and end all. The customers have a say also. So hence the reason why we want you to come in. We want you to engage us so that we can help you to overcome.
Mr. Moses?
We have conversations that take place every single day across the island. we remind people, and maybe I could just put it in this one sentence, Grenada Cooperative Bank Limited is not going anywhere. We're here to stay. Yeah? We probably should be 473 Co-op. We ain't going anywhere. So,
Wow, sounds good.
we're not going anywhere. You have
473 Co-op.
We have your
welcome
back. We have your back. We have your back.
Yes. 473 Co-op, welcome home. We have your back. I like that. I like that. Well, we're getting ready to wrap, and it's been really quite an experience here this evening. And we start with you, Mr. Moses.
Yes. This crisis took everybody by surprise. It's not yet over. Things are starting to happen that begin to look ugly again. We don't want people to start despairing all over again. We have to look at examples that went before us, like Sweden and so on. Had the challenges, got to herd immunity. You don't even hear them in the news anymore. There's no such thing as COVID happening over there. So this too is going to pass. We want our customers, along with ourselves, to keep that hope that this too will pass. While it is here, we are the bigger brother looking out for small brother. We have the resources to treat with each customer, and we are prepared to treat with each customer. We just want you to come in, chat with us, and tell us what is happening with you. Once we know what is happening with you, we can then start charting the way forward. It is no longer you on your own trying to go forward. It is now you and Co-op Bank going forward. Come in, talk to us.
Thank you so much, Mr. Lawrence.
Yes, we do not want customers to be paranoid. We don't want customers to be overly stressed. Invariably, customers must have a conversation with themselves. The family come together. You find that we would certainly encourage parents, who might have stumbled where employment is concerned, where income is concerned. You bring the family together. It might be necessary to have the children becoming supportive, this children taking a bill, that is the kind of conversation you need to have. We may not necessarily suggest that the kids become assigned to the loan, but it's just really just providing support, in some form or shape. And that's what we're here for. We are dominant in the market, and therefore we expect to continue to remain dominant. And I sit up when I say that, I lean forward when I say that. We certainly expect to continue to be like that. So hence the reason why we need to have our customers to be strong, to be loyal to us. And Brenda, I also would like to take this opportunity to inform the public that we unfortunately have had to close our Grenville branch. It will be closed for tomorrow and Friday. We expect to reopen on Monday, the 6th of September, certainly to offer limited services in that reopening. So we just want to inform members of the public that given the current pandemic around us, we have been occasioned to close the branch to facilitate, some deep cleaning and so on. So we ask the public, make them know that please, the ABMs will continue to operate. Our online services are certainly available. So we ask them to bear with us, please, in this regard, as we all we want to be safe. So we do expect to reopen to offer some limited service on Monday, the 6th of September. Thank you.
Most welcome. Well, it has been quite an evening. We thank you so much, everyone who has joined us. Grenada Cooperative Bank's engagement with you this evening is for continued collaborative efforts for financial solutions to ensure that you, the valued customers of the bank, are making the best choice when the loan deferral payments are no more. It's been a pleasure to be here with this esteemed panel presenters, the top executives of the branch. Mr. Larry Lawrence, he is the Managing Director Designate, and Mr. Dion Moses, the Chief Experience Officer of the Grenada Co-operative Bank. This was a production of the Grenada Co-operative Bank Limited, all rights reserved. For and behalf of Grenada Co-operative Bank, I am Brenda Batiste. Good night.